What's causing all this extreme weather? Let's go to our meteorologist, Mari Ramos, at the World Weather Center to find out. Mari.
Monita, that's just a question that everyone is asking. You know, we see all of these signs of extreme weather everywhere. And, you know, a lot of people are, of course, saying, you know, this is climate change. This is what people have been talking about for such a long time, the kind of things that would happen. But I want to make sure we keep this in perspective. First of all, scientists have always said, and even now, and even those that are proponents of global warming or climate change, say you can't link one single event or one event into the whole big picture. So there's a lot of data that has to be taken care of. The other thing is, especially in the Western Pacific right now, it is typhoon season. And this is when they tend to see the most tropical cyclones affect those areas. And before last week, we were actually, and still now, below average when it comes to tropical cyclones in that part of the world. So let's start with that. One of the things that happens, and we can't control the weather, but we can control the places where we live and the things that happen in the places that we live. A lot of the problems that we've seen and we continue to see in places like Manila and sometimes in China and even in the more developed cities like in Beijing, when we saw all of that flooding just a couple of weeks ago. There's a lot of different aggravating factors. And one of the things that emergency managers are always looking at is the increased population in these vulnerable areas, such as coast and floodplains. I'm going to talk a little bit and show you the topography of Metro Manila, for example, and they are in a floodplain, very vulnerable to flooding. And when you get this kind of extreme rainfall, this is what we end up with, this disaster. Another thing is urban planning and infrastructure. How well built are not just the roadways, but where people are actually living. A lot of these places have little or no urban planning in place. It comes from decades and decades, so this is not a new thing. And then the infrastructure, their drainage systems and all of those things. These are things that happen all over the world in almost any city. These are struggles that we have to deal with when it comes to extreme weather. These things make it worse. The other thing is the income level of people. This is one of the things that happens over and over. There was a study from the UN a few years ago talking about how the income level has a lot to do with the mortality rate in a country. When you look at a more developed country like Japan, for example, you're more likely to survive a disaster there than you are in another place like, for example, say the Philippines or India. Now, another thing to watch out for is emergency planning and communication. How good is that? How quickly are people getting the information that they need in order to get out of the way? You're always going to have extreme events like what we're seeing here, so that is a big concern. And some of the images that we see here from the Philippines, you've seen these over and over of the water very high. You know, this has a lot to do like with all of those things that we were talking about. So many people living in these areas that are vulnerable to flooding and to landslides. Now, when you talk about Manila proper, we were saying just a little while ago, it's located almost in a basin between the bay and the ocean. When this happens, this water has to go somewhere, and it continues to drain farther to the south. So some of the flooding that we've seen in some of these neighborhoods to the north will begin to shift farther to the south to places like Laguna Bay, Laguna de Bay, for example. And then over here you have the mountains, and with the rain that keeps coming, you may still see the possibility of more flooding and mudslides. The deluge has been tremendous, 740 millimeters of rain. We're still seeing that flow coming in. We're not expecting the rain to be as heavy, but any amount of rain that falls here is going to be a huge concern over these areas. We still have the situation for Shanghai, as you can see here, with that typhoon that was making landfall. That storm is a tropical storm now, and it should continue to weekend. And last but not least, we did have Ernesto make landfall overnight in the Yucatan Peninsula, and you can see that storm continuing to trail through this area, and it could reemerge in the southern portion of the Gulf of Mexico and again become a hurricane. Back to you.